All right, hello and welcome. How is everyone doing? I hope that I'm actually coming in fine. I have nothing where it should be, but we're just rocking and rolling here, guys. So I do apologize for that slight delay. Apparently, uh, I use what is it? The one that comes with Windows. They got rid of Internet Explorer. They call it something new now. Microsoft Edge. I use that as my window to give me the clip show down below. And apparently Edge decided that it wasn't going to work with XSplit anymore. So I kind of had a hard time getting that fixed up, but hopefully I don't hear any sound over on YouTube, do I? All right. Is anyone hearing this right now on YouTube? I'm guessing not. Let's see, the audio stream's current bitrate 0 is lower than the recommended bitrate. We recommend that your audio stream bitrate at 128. Is anyone in the chat able to see this, or is this just going to be one of those days? LGG is saying 5 by 5. They hear me just fine. Well,
Yeah, I could hear it on YouTube.
then Chrome is a dirty, filthy liar, and so is YouTube. Weird.
YouTube's lying. Surely not.
Oh gosh, guys, it's gonna be that kind of stream. We're gonna do our best here. Hopefully things even out for us as time goes on. We'll see. Oh, and I actually. Oh wow. See, this is why I usually spend a good amount of time before the stream getting ready. Today I was like, you know what? I streamed last night. I don't need to do anything today. I can just come up here a couple minutes beforehand, make sure everything's right where it needs to be, and we'll be fine. It'll be fine. And it wasn't. It wasn't at all fine. So let's see. I need to get this pulled up as well. And guys, I do apologize for this. John, how has your week been? You ready for Christmas stuff?
As ready as I'll ever be. Not bad overall.
Yeah. You got any fun plans coming up?
Not really, no.
Let's see.
Other than
Oh,
SeaQuest, of course.
I know what the issue is. It's because I muted this, didn't I? Okay, yeah. Other than SeaQuest, well, what about Christmas Day? You and your family gonna do anything fun?
Yeah, we tend to take it pretty easy.
Cool. There we go. There we go. I was just being an idiot. So the issue going on for anyone who cares. I was using originally I was using Voice Meter Banana to give me some more control over audio inputs and outputs, and I was really kind of struggling with what they were giving me. Like I needed more, so I got Voice Meter Potato, and that thing was constantly crashing. It was taking up a little more of my computer resources, and I really wanted it to. So I dropped back to Banana, but now I'm hitting the problem where I don't have enough inputs and outputs again. Like I just need one more. I need something between Banana and Potato, like a Voice Meter Avocado or something, to just give me that one extra input without going overboard. So I had muted one of my channels to make sure I wasn't getting a weird echo, but it's worked out. It's worked out. Let's say hi to everyone in the chat. Thank you for being patient, assuming you're still here. Hey, Bradley Briggs. Sup, y'all? He wants to know, when does a dad joke become a dad joke? When it leaves and never comes back. Ouch.
That's harsh.
That is harsh. And then he follows up. He says, why can't a nose be 12 inches long? Because then it would be a foot. Very nice, Bradley. Very nice. John DiMarco's here. I think I know that guy. He's a pretty nice guy.
Weirdo.
Dee Myers in the house. How you doing, Dee Myers? The Fed Doc. Glad to see you're here. He says meanders in, nursing a hangover. Hello, Matthew. Hello, Fed Doc. Doing well today. LDG Pixels is here. Hey, LDG, how you doing? It's glad to have you on the stream last night. and everyone's telling me that everything's going fine and I can ignore that error message because YouTube is an idiot. And sure enough, I have an excellent connection now because YouTube is an idiot. Oh gosh, if there is a different platform, right? And Commodore Ty's here. Hey, Commodore Ty. Commodore Ty, I was able to find what you were looking for, and I will put that up tomorrow morning for everyone to be able to download with 4K downloader, and so that you can use that in your reviews. And because I forgot to have it up this whole time, let me put right there. There is a link to the CYTube, which, I mean, it's just cytu.be/r/LifeWithMatthew. And that's where you can go to watch this live with us. If you're watching this later, you can go to peacock.tv, sign up for a free account, and be able to watch this at your own pace. We're going to do this every week, and I'm very happy to say that I actually got my schedule worked out, so we can do this every week from now on. We may... once I start doing the virtual pub on Sunday and seeing how that actually works, we may do a little switching around if it works with John. Because people have been pointing out Sunday nights are pretty busy for people. There's a lot of YouTube stuff going on, and there's also football going on. Something that is a thing. It's a thing that a lot of people enjoy, a lot of people do. I don't, and so I had completely forgotten about it. So yeah, we may.
It's for normal people, not us.
Yeah. So we may. I may move the pub back to Wednesday night, and then if that happens, if it works for John, maybe we move SeaQuest to Monday nights, and then I can still have a day between streams and be able to hang out and have fun with everyone. But this is all meaningless, just me talking shop as people kind of trickle in here, and people get a chance to actually go to my CYTube, which allows us all to watch this synchronized. So like I said, you can watch this anytime you want on Peacock TV. But if you want to watch this synchronized with us right now, you can go to cytu.be/r/LifeWithMatthew and be able to watch this live with us. And the point of all this is just that we're here to have fun, and we're going to provide some live commentary, which we're not always the best at talking because we get into the show too much. But for anyone who can put up with that, we do provide live commentary of what's going on in the show. We'll provide clips down below if you have a device where you can't be on two monitors at once, like a cell phone, and we'll try and tell you what's going on in each episode and kind of some funny things as they pop up. But with all that said, why don't we go ahead and kick this stream off? So if you are watching this later, we will give you a 5 count and then actually get going. So get ready to hit your play button in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go.
We open with a rocket launch with a narration going on in the background.
Now, one of the neat things about the actor who played this is John Crichton's dad from Farscape. I don't know if you ever watched Farscape. It was a Australian-American sci-fi show, the Jim Henson one with the Muppets.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Well, he was John Crichton's dad, and it took me a second to put the voice with the face. And I had to laugh at this sequence that they're doing right here because they've tried to like take the moon landing and put a red filter over everything to make it seem like, yeah, we're landing on the red planet and not Mars. But we find out that what's going on right now is that for several years they've been doing this Mars mission. I think it was several years. They stayed on the planet for 1 month, but the actual round trip has taken several years. And then the astronauts who are on Mars are landing or about to land right now. And so everything is just stopped as we watch the re-entry of these brave astronauts on their way back from Mars. And NB Geeks, Let's Talk is here. Hello, NB Geeks. How you doing? And yes, Bradley, Farscape, the show with 2 actors who went on to play in Stargate.
But meanwhile, Lewis has more interesting things to look at than the newscast.
Oh, Lewis. And then Krieg just, no, no, she's either out of your league or she's too old for you because she kind of looks a lot too old for him, in my opinion. I mean, she definitely looks older than Hitchcock does right there.
Oh, it's Matthew's favorite character.
Oh, yes, Darwin. He has become a lot more cool since you revealed that he was an animatronic.
I need to come around eventually.
Uh, no. No. No, but we do get Dr. Westphalen and Captain Bridger off examining this coral reef, and he kind of reveals that there's some gentle camaraderie between him and the commander of this mission that they worry about. With everyone looking toward the space program, maybe there's not going to be as much funding for SeaQuest anymore. Which is kind of funny because the space program is 100% an American effort, whereas SeaQuest is the United Earth Oceans. It's a UEN, UN under the ocean. So, I mean, yeah, in real life, the U.S. supplies most of the funding for the UN, but like, even if the U.S. decreased funding for the UEO, I think SeaQuest would still have all the funding it needs to do what it needs to do.
If I remember correctly, that they said that the crew of the rocket had members from different space agencies. So I don't know if that's supposed to be like a collective effort as well.
Oh, is it? Okay. I guess we'll see in a second here the president. So I thought it was more U.S. centric. Okay, yeah. There's an armband with a Japanese symbol. There's the American flag, as we kind of do a eagle eye view rotating around the landing pod. What is that? German flag maybe? Red, black, yellow.
Could be.
And then I don't recognize the last flag there. Like I can't see it, I should say. So yeah, this guy right here. This is John Crichton's dad. Not her. She's some Asian lady. So as they come in, the SeaQuest has tapped into this because they're SeaQuest military organization. They can apparently tap in even though they're underwater right now, but we forgive that. And we find out that one of the thrusters number 4, is stuck on, and so the reentry pod is starting to tumble head over heels. And things are looking quite dire. Which it really would be. I mean, you recall that the way the reentry pod works is that it has a pretty thick heat shield on the bottom of it. And then not so much in the way of heat shielding anywhere else on it. Like, not none, but definitely not enough to survive reentry. I guess they could be saying they're low enough in the atmosphere now where it's not too big of an issue. But it's still a pretty big issue to... I mean, it was glowing red still. So them tumbling head over foot is definitely not a good situation to be in. And Springtime wants to know, am I sad that so many kids don't remember the 2018 manned Mars mission? If things aren't done in 15 seconds on a TikTok video these days, the kids just have no interest in it. It's truly a sad state of affairs that such a monumentous occasion went completely unregarded with our younger generation. So we find out that SeaQuest is in the Indian Ocean at this point, near Christmas Island. Which you may recall that Christmas Island is a lot like Easter Island, except instead of having giant heads, it has giant pine trees with natural tinsel growing off of them. Quite the amazing biological feat.
It's a shame they didn't have the budget to go there.
Yeah, It's really quite the place. You wouldn't expect to find a snow-covered island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, but there it is.
Climate change.
So we got Admiral Paris over here letting them know that they have a reason to believe that even though the shuttle, went, bum overhead, that someone is alive on it because a message buoy was extended up from it. And the only way you can get this message buoy is if someone manually launches it. So someone at least survived for at least a small amount of time after hitting the ocean. And the SeaQuest is being commandeered to do this mission. And Bridger is kind of like, well, why me? Uh, it's kind of out of our purview. And then the Admiral Paris like clicks a button on his remote, and the camera pans over, and you see there's the president of the United States sitting there, which kind of a jerk move on Paris's part to not warn you ahead of time that you're talking with the president right next to you.
And the president indicates it's a military recovery, which is not something Bridger's thrilled to hear.
Which is interesting because the purpose of the SeaQuest was to be this combination military and scientific adventure or joint venture. And we've really focused on the civilian aspect of it, the scientific aspect. No complaints there. But then you get this moment where we actually see some military stuff and they throw a fuss. So we find out that we have a new, what do you call it? A new power in the world.
Yeah, Southeast Asia Confederation.
The Montegrand something or other Confederacy. And this is interesting because the diatribe that this military officer goes on is actually a fair enough critique of U.S. policy in 2018 and and before and after. The guy's going on about how, the Americans, they say they're going to be here for 2 months and they're here for 2 years. They say they're going to be here for 2 hours and they're here for 2 months. We don't want to let the Americans into our sovereign borders, our ocean territory. And the president, who is this gentleman here that you see on the screen right now, he's saying, I want our nation or our confederacy to be in the news for something other than a military reason. I want us to find those astronauts and save them so that we can have this feather to put in our cap so that everyone's like, oh, hey, these people aren't all just a bunch of rabid militants. In Springtime is saying, wouldn't they send a recovery ship instead of a nuclear-armed submarine to save the Mars crew? That was Bridger's complaint. They should have done that, but the reason they were given is that they were the closest ones, I think.
Yeah, they're the only ship in the quadrant.
Yeah. And weren't they also... I was talking over it, so I apologize. But I think they were also saying they were a little worried about where this was landing down.
Yeah, because it landed in the territory of this confederation, and apparently they're always fighting with each other.
And there's Darwin. Yay. So, Sam Raimi over there, or Tim Raimi, excuse me, he was told to brush up on his Montegrand dialect, which, as we turn here and he opens up his book, it's a conversational Vietnamese. So these are the apparently Vietnam is the kind of allegory we're going with for this episode. That you have a military presence, somewhat guerrilla in nature, and we're concerned about having to interact with them.
Meanwhile, they've been in contact with the capsule underwater.
And you find out that Scott, the Michael Crichton's dad, the commander of this mission, and Bridger knew each other from long ago. And the last time Scott was aware of Bridger's location was Bridger was still on the island in isolation. So they've been gone for a long time on this Mars mission. But Scott is saying, please tell me you're close by. And we find out that no, they are a solid 8 hours away from Scott and the downed shuttle crew. And while everyone's alive, people are kind of banged up.
And there's a slow leak into the capsule.
And it seems like they may be sinking very, very slowly. The inflation raft that was supposed to inflate only partially did so. And so they're somewhat at a buoyancy level for now, just 40 feet down, it seems. But they're concerned that as they bring in water, that the buoyancy is going to change and they're going to start sinking. And they're saying, well, look, there's something else we need to talk about. What's the military clearance on your crew? And Bridger said, well, it's, you can talk. And we find out that they actually found, I don't know he just said the scientific name, but I'm not going to get it. But they found snails, snail skeletons on Mars. So proof positive that at some point there was enough water to support life on Mars. and Darwin is trying to figure out how far away Mars is. And Lewis is like, well, it's like another island. And Darwin goes, well, how far away is island Mars? He goes, and Bridger responds, it's about $100 trillion away, because that's how he equates everything. Which is interesting, because it's, when you have competing scientific endeavors, federal funding can only go so far. Which is, why I'm personally a fan of private funding, but neither here nor there. But even private funding can only go so far if you have competing scientific fields.
There's Bridger's talking about how he was going up against his friend for funding. It was that night they learned that his son had been killed.
It was like right after he got the major win that SeaQuest was going to go forward. He and his wife, which I think he said Carol?
I think so.
Yeah. They found out that the son died, and he never went back to SeaQuest. So he had this huge victory in the Senate, or Congress, whoever does the funding, and then immediately quit. And so while he and West Valen are having this moment, all of a sudden the ship shudders, and one of the whiskers just kind of poofed. And there goes 2 more whiskers. What's going on here? There's a third. And so everyone all stop, freeze the whiskers, freeze the ship.
Minefield.
Not quite as cool as DS9's Minefield, but still, they are in a trench, and mines are all around them right now. And we find out that these are subsurface mines, so they were literally buried slightly, and we find out that they were just barely done. Like, it was very freshly planted there. And you see a ship going off the other side, which it's kind of like, well, okay, if they are literally buried in the dirt, why don't you simply go up? you don't have to be skimming the ocean floor here, going through the trench.
I think it said that the mines were activated by wake or something like that. Maybe if they go over it, they would still set them off. I'm not sure.
Let's see. Springtime is saying, wouldn't they have multiple recovery vessels and work this out well before this episode? So how would sending a heavily armed nuclear submarine with nuclear missiles help? Well, they also have non-nuclear missiles. They have not the photon bullet. That was something else.
Also, I don't think this is where the capsule was supposed to land. So they probably had recovery vehicles somewhere else.
Yeah, when that thresher went off, that's true. They would have ended up in a much different location. So West Phelan wants to know how everyone's doing, checking for signs of the bins. The water temperature is dropping rapidly, though, so they're getting worried about hypothermia, which, I mean, frankly, the water coming in probably should have been pretty chilly to start off with once you got down to 40 feet. I mean, nothing freezing. It is the middle of the Indian Ocean here.
Now, they use the whiskers to clear out the minefield, but apparently they're out.
And he's going to send Hitchcock and oh,
A Crocker.
Crocker. There we go. Uh, he's going to send them out into one of their subs, and what they're going to try and do is confuse the sensors of the enemy sub. They want them to think that SeaQuest is heading off in a different direction, the one with Crocker and Hitchcock, while actual SeaQuest moves on toward the navigation buoy that they sent up. And here, Bridger's doubling down on. I count my accomplishments by how much they cost. Now, the older I get, and they're having a good back and forth here.
Trophy to prove a thesis.
So they're arguing about the merits of their two different fields. That uh, it is more important to go to other planets to see if life exists than to try to go under the ocean to see what sort of life actually exists. That if you can find life on a different planet, you can like prove more scientific proof than you could possibly get from studying real life that exists in an ocean. I think I'm on Bridger's side in this debate as I say it out loud.
Like I said, $400 billion for a snail.
Yeah. And Bridger, apparently his stance is that until you can travel at a speed closer or beyond the speed of light, that traveling to other planets searching for life is kind of a moot point. Like, it's not financially responsible to sink that sort of cost until you can go that speed. Springtime is saying, okay, wouldn't they have a plan for recovering the capsule if it had ET fossils on board well in advance? You would think they would, but clearly they're way, way off course after the thruster messed them up. And even in the 90s, they had underwater mines, was encapsulated torpedoes. Like buried into the ground. Like, you always see the TV version of mines where you got the chain connecting it to the bottom as you try and sneak into the harbor or something. But the good news is that Crocker and Hitchcock are having success in their mission. That they're very nervous from the way everyone's just ready to attack everyone else in this area. But at the very least, they are having people follow them. And they're kind of having to thread that needle between keeping far enough away to not have the illusion destroyed and not being too far away such that the enemy sub loses its interest and goes after someone else. And Krieg is bemoaning like, oh, I wish I could have been up there. You know, I wish I'd brought my camera to get some photos. These people are heroes. They're the amazing ones. And Wes Phelan is like, oh yes, it'd be so much more fun to be in a closet hurling through space for months and years as opposed to living aboard SeaQuest with all this space and all the fine amenities we have. But Krieg is saying, well, you know, we could always just sabotage their research once we find the snails. I don't know. Maybe we could make some escargot. Meanwhile, Bridger's trying to figure out who this enemy sub actually is. That's apparently they are sending. They don't care if people know where they are. They just don't want to know who they are. So they are destroying their noise profile by just throwing out all kinds of noise, as much noise as they possibly can. But we find out that they have found the sub, and the president of this confederation is saying, it sucks. I wish we had found them first, but we've lost. We did everything we could. So just be as supportive in any way you can with the individuals. But things aren't quite what they seem, because it turns out that the module that they were following, the communication GPS thing, it's been cut loose. And so they were following the wrong signal this whole time.
Meanwhile, Crocker and Hitchcock have been attacked by a torpedo, it seems.
So, needless to say, Scott is not too pleased about this news. He doesn't understand why it was broken off. Why didn't they notice it was broken off? And we find out that where they are, there's this weird subsuction current. So while the pod itself was heading east or west, the message buoy was actually being pushed the exact opposite direction by this current. So it's okay. Yeah, we're sorry. We're not where you thought you were, but now we are locked onto your radio signal, and we are following your radio signal instead of following the buoy. Which, it kind of makes sense that you can make this mistake, because triangulation off of a radio signal, when you have a actual GPS location, would not be an ideal solution. But now they realize they have no options, they've locked on. And Bridger is saying, I don't care if you have to melt the engines, just overdrive it, whatever you have to do, we've got to get to those astronauts. And Bridger is now being he's being completely reprimanded by the president right now. He's saying, I assumed you would have taken these considerations when you were considering your actions. Like, I thought you were smart enough to handle this. And now they're calling Bridger out. They're like, hey, is your dislike of the space program clouding your judgment?
And then Lewis hacks in and says, hey.
How can they think you screwed up on purpose? Bridger's like, thank you, Lewis, you may leave now. But then the kid showing up does get everyone to kind of, cool their jets for a half second. Bridger says, I'm just going to assume that question wasn't asked. And the president shakes his head. All right, you're right. He doesn't say he was out of line because he's a politician, but he gets as close as a politician will to apologizing.
So he turns around, he had Ford listening in, and he asks him, is my judgment compromised?
And Ford doesn't actually give him a direct answer at this point. He makes Bridger kind of think about it some more. But then Ford is like, okay, let's be real here. The fact that you're asking this question is kind of indicative of the fact that you have been thinking about these things. You are taking this seriously, and you're not being so petty that you're gonna let your friend die out there. Yes, you made a mistake. You're fallible, which is one of the reasons we love old TV shows, because people weren't perfect. And now they're on the right track, and they are going to try and rescue Scott here. And Springtime is saying, no, mines that were torpedoes for use against submarines and surface ships since the 70s, and were just above the bottom of the ocean floor. Interesting. So they're trying to figure out how they can get into this secure area, into the Montegrand Confederacy's waters, without getting everyone attacking them. They see that there's several ships out there. but they're more concerned about the submarine that's been dogging them. And finally, at this point, the president of the Montegran Confederation is willing to talk with them. And he's like, look, Bridger, the fact that you're steaming around like a bunch of colonial powerists does nothing but fuel my enemies. You're making my life so difficult. And he specifically calls out the fact that Bridger launched Crocker and Hitchcock into another submersible. He's like, that was an intentional provocation against my waters, my territory. And Bridger owns up. He's like, yes, that was my mistake. I was trying to rush things. I shouldn't have done that. But let's also talk about your sub. Your sub is the one pressuring me and shooting torpedoes and mines, placing mines for me. And this president is like, okay, yeah, if that's the case, then this is my fault, and I apologize for that. And Bridger says, I just want your word that you won't impede my efforts. I just want to rescue this crew.
And the president reveals that they have Hitchcock and Crocker.
And Raimi, he stands up and he's like, Crocker, Hitchcock. And it's like, hey, way to, have a poker face there. What if this turned out to be a terrorist negotiation situation? You just revealed that we know these people and they are ours. But it turns out he's actually a decent guy, it seems like. And so he says, we're going to remand them over to you as soon as we can. And as soon as the video conference call ends, the president tears into this military advisor of his. He's like, how dare you do this? You don't dictate policy. It's my job to dictate policy. It's your job to do what I tell you to with the military. And the military advisor is like, look, I'm just doing what we can here. You said we needed a win, and I was trying to get you that win. And he says, okay, here's the thing. We want to get to them first. Do not interfere with the SeaQuest anymore. If we can get there first, I want to be the ones to rescue them. But if SeaQuest gets there first, then back off. And the military advisor is like, okay, yeah, fine. I'll play nice. And hey, Eastland Burkholder, how you doing? I'm not sure if I've seen you on the stream before. Welcome. Saying I like SeaQuest. Well, I do too. In fact, this is the first time I've been watching through SeaQuest since it aired, just about. Maybe I saw it in syndication once, pretty close to when it aired. And so we're going through this one episode a week, just like it was actually on air.
Now they've got an incoming torpedo.
Yeah, so right after the military advisor was told to disengage, to not interfere, we find out that the submarine is taking pot shots at them with torpedoes. And that the torpedo is 4 miles away and rapidly approaching them. And now it's 2 miles away. And I have to wonder, I wish Darren was here where he could pipe in. How is that accurate? Does a torpedo really move at such a great speed underwater to be able to cover several miles in the course of a handful of seconds? But they launch countermeasures and it takes out the torpedo, but then, there's 2 more torpedoes immediately behind it. So they do a quick crash dive. They're trying to get out of the way of these 2 torpedoes just hurling right at them. And the first one just barely misses their rear tail fin there.
And they get hit by the third one.
But fortunately, the only thing that happened is that they got a piece of the rudder and the propulsion was hit a little bit. And as a result, their speed has been greatly diminished. Meanwhile, this whole time, West Valen has been telling them what they need to do to make sure that they don't get the bends. As they put on their suit, they need to make sure that they're mixing nitrogen in with their oxygen which is an interesting issue. When you're in space, you don't have to worry about pressure too much. So the actual oxygen content of the spaceship is it pretty high still? I think they changed things a little bit after the tragedy that happened. Oh, I forget the actual pod it happened on, but there was they had Velcro, and the Velcro ended up being too big and it caused a static spark to happen, and roasted everyone alive aboard, like while they're still on the launch pad. I think they I think they changed the oxygen concentration at that point while it was on the surface. But as a result, the spacesuit wouldn't have to worry about nitrogen the way that a submarine would need to worry about. But Scott is, he's kind of getting pretty somber here. He's realizing this is might be it. Uh, I have a daughter I've never seen before. Can you go check in on them if this goes bad? But even more difficult for me to ask, can you can you get the samples back to NASA? If we die, at least get the samples back. And Scott, they're having this nice, touching moment. He's like, "You want to know the real reason why I went to NASA? Why the real reason why I signed up for this Mars mission?" It's like, "I knew that this would be the only way I would ever be above you." Which is nice. I kind of wish that Lucas had taken some dialogue tips from this episode when he was doing, episode 2 and 3. Like, we don't get to see any of their fights, but at the same time, we get a, like, just with these interactions we're seeing that, yes, they're friends. At the same time, they are very opposite on what they think funding should go to, where research should be focused on. And so when we don't see any of those fights, we at least see all the evidence of those fights. And at the end of the day, how they're still friends through the fights. So they do find the shuttle pod there, and Dr. Westphalen is really concerned because they are past the depth of oxygen necrosity, the bins. But as they come by, they discover that the cargo container has been jettisoned, and they're extremely confused. Like, hey, this is wrong. There should be a piece here. Like, there shouldn't be a hole in the ship.
Excuse me for a minute.
Yeah, and they're kind of making some conjecture, like what could have happened. Maybe it came off on impact. Maybe it came off in reentry. And Bridger's like, I don't care about the samples right now. Think about the bigger picture. And the camera rotates around, and you find out that the crew is missing. That they blew the airlock from the inside and did a last ditch effort to get to the surface. And Bridger, he's pissed. He's like, yeah, their own air was choking them at this point. That what they'd gone down to the depth where the oxygen was literally toxic to their system. And he's pissed off, but he says, I would have done the same thing, because yes, it was a no-win situation. They could either stay in the pod and suffocate to death on oxygen, or they could jettison and get the bins and die on the way to the surface. So they took the remote chance they would survive making it to the surface. It was a hard choice, but it was the right choice. And so here we are. We're reporting the situation to the president. And the president is saying, I'm sorry about the loss of life, but the most important thing right now is the core samples. We need to figure out what happened to these core samples. And we just don't know how we're going to find it. The container is so small. How can our sensors possibly find it? But then Lewis makes a comment about a certain mineral. And the president's like, why is this kid even here? Shut that fool up. But Bridger says, no. I want to hear him. What are you saying? And Lewis is kind of noticing, well, hey, wait a minute, didn't you say they took core samples? One of them was from Mars's biggest volcano. And if I'm not mistaken, it has an extremely high magnetic field. So if we could calibrate our sensors to look for that magnetic field at a much higher density than what you would find in the Indian Ocean in this area, we could find it. And so he gets complimented by the president. That was good work, son. So they're going to turn SeaQuest around and retrace the boat's path, trying to, or the capsule's path, trying to figure out where this cargo container is, because that is the most important thing at this point. Yes, we lost the astronauts, but if at least we can recover their work, then it wasn't a complete loss. They didn't die completely in vain.
Oh, but wait. We didn't lose the astronauts.
Dun dun dun! And it turns out that the the Confederation, I can't ever remember how to pronounce the fictitious country they came up with. But the Confederation guy, they got there just in the nick of time to rescue them. And the president here, he just wants to immediately notify the U.S., let them know we got their astronauts, we everyone's safe, and that way they can get that moment where they saved the day. They're finally in the news for a non-military reason. And the military advisor says, before we tell anyone, give me just an hour. Let's get to the hospital. Let's check them out. Let's make sure that no one's on the verge of death. We don't want an international incident because someone died after we said we found them. So give me an hour. And the president, he's like, okay, good point. But once the president leaves, the military advisor is saying, where is the sample you found? And Scott looks over and he sees the handgun and his guy lying on the ground, and he realizes that what's going on here is a shakedown. That he's being ransomed, basically. It's the life of himself and his crew for the cargo container. And the military advisor says, oh, it's just a finder's fee. Maybe 8-figure finder fee. And so he takes one more look over at the guy with the gun and he says, I knew your sub couldn't be SeaQuest. So when I saw you coming, I jettisoned it. And the military advisor thanks him. So, you are a hero. And tells his subordinate there to take them to the infirmary and keep them there until I notify you otherwise. And Springtime is saying, I heard that you and Bird of Prey 5 were both cooks on SeaQuest DSV back in 2018, and that you're both fired from the UEO after Trump remembered that the UN still existed, so he sold the sub to Carnival. Mostly true. It's not that we were fired, it's that when Trump reduced his funding to the UN, and no one else really stepped up to cover what they were supposed to. Some countries increased their funding a little bit, but it wasn't enough, and so we were unfortunately let go. Bird of Prey 5, obviously, because they didn't want to pay for handicap accessible areas anymore, and myself because a fat cook only works on land. When you're in a sub, you can't have that sort of real estate. The extra inches around the waistline, it's not good on a sub, so they got rid of me and hired a skinny chef. He doesn't cook as well, but he takes up less space, so, it's all a politics game. Meanwhile, West Valen and Bridger are trying to find the cargo container. They think that they found the location, and they're really committed to making sure that they can get this and recover it in memory of Scott. And sure enough, there it is. They found the cargo container, and we just want to keep it steady because we don't want to disturb the core. Excuse me. They don't want to disturb the core samples any more than they have.
They got rival divers
With their harpoons. But thankfully, Darwin saves the
The
day.
day.
Yay.
Yeah. The real hero.
I kind of feel like the sharks on Finding Nemo. Oh, look at me, I'm a flippin' dolphin. Dolphins are the worst. But they, because of Flipper over there, they were able to turn the tides and get out of there. And Scott is led out to an area and he goes, "You're going to kill me and my crew, aren't you?" The advisor says, "Well, you know, the military, these roads can be so treacherous. Things happen." And then you see the president show up with all his personal guards. And he's thoroughly disgusted. How dare you do this? After all these years, you let your greed blind you. You almost sent our federation into international war for your own personal greed. And he carries him off. And so he remands Scott over to the UEO officers of Hitchcock and Crocker. And he actually says a nice line here. He says that my contrition is feeble, but heartfelt, which is I think that was a pretty good line.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
I when a moment like this happens, where you see the view screen, I really wish we had a widescreen version of SeaQuest DSV. Because it just with this letterbox, it feels like the rest of the scene is there. We're just losing it. But who knows? It might be a TNG thing where just off screen in almost every shot, the magic is ruined
Yeah.
from all the sets and stuff poking through. But then we transition back to the SeaQuest, and we see there's the mollusk that they found, and they're keeping it in the quarantine chamber.
No more torpedoes.
And Scott looks over like, "What the heck? The dolphin talks?" And yeah, the dolphin talks. And Scott gives him a ribbing like, "This is it? This is what you spent all your money on? A talking dolphin?" He's like, "I got the most important press conference of all time. I'm still sitting here in a wheelchair in my bathrobe. I need to go get ready for this." And he thanks Bridger for rescuing him, and Bridger says, "Welcome home." And Darwin swims off toward the camera. And we get Bob Vellard talking. And it's funny because after the episode going back and forth about which one is more important, space exploration or under the water exploration, Bob Valen over here talks about how they're both equally important. That they were able to launch a satellite into space, and that satellite was able to do mapping of under the sea trench formations and stuff. So they're actually both very important. And there we go. That was better than Martians, which that was the last line. While Scott was ribbing Captain Bridger, Bridger said, "Well, you know, Darwin and the stuff we're doing down here is at least better than any Martian." So there we go, the title for the episode. And Springtime is saying, "I heard that Trump found out about Darwin and your fresh meat for the crew night and the other wrongdoings of the crew aboard SeaQuest DSV." Well, the true tragedy of that, Springtime, is that what I thought was going to happen, where we got a good meal of fresh meat, it turned out all just to be silicone and rubber and foam. So it was not the best night in the galley when we found that out about Darwin. So how did you like the episode, John?
No, I thought this episode was great. A lot of fun. I love the character interactions between Bridger and his friend. You said you could tell that they had a background without them having to, to say that they were friends. You could just tell they were friends. Plus the debate between the space or the sea. It was interesting going back and forth because you could see both sides of the issue.
Yeah, I think I think the thing I enjoyed most about the well, one, good writing. I am a sucker for good writing, and I did really enjoy the moments in which basically nothing was happening. Uh, Bridger and Scott talking to each other was absolutely something I would call filler in most episodes. But in this episode, as they built up this relationship and kind of gave you the framework for why these two butt heads a little bit, it was the meat of the episode. And I really, really enjoyed that kind of writing. But I also, my favorite part was not just that, but the president of the Confederation of the Vietnamese people, which they didn't call them Vietnamese, but I mean, you had Tim Ramey reading a book on how to speak Vietnamese, so I think I can connect a couple dots there. But I like the fact that as you watched all this, you were really left in the dark for a while on whether the president was kind of as altruistic as he was making himself out to be, or if this really was going to be a situation where they got the astronauts first, and then we had a secondary issue going on where, well, now we got to rescue our astronauts. We got to get them away from these people who it's a violent military confederation. What are we going to do here? And it turns out that no, it wasn't that at all. It was actually a government that, in a lot of ways, is uh, less corrupt than our own government, if I am to be perfectly blunt. And I enjoyed kind of that, not a true fake out that they did, but just a um, gentle fake out. Kind of, how would you describe that? Because it, the president wasn't ever really written like he was going to be a villain, but just that kind of, are you sure you know where he stands? Plotline they did.
Yes, or is he going to let himself be pushed around by his general? But no, in the end, he stood up to him and made him do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. What about negative stuff? Was there anything about this episode that you found to be lacking?
Well, there could always be more Darwin in it. But other than that, I'd say it was a pretty solid episode.
I will say that I am thankful that this episode, while Darwin was in it, he didn't drag the episode down. So I think, gosh, I think that after that first episode, as it aired, they're like, oh my goodness, we have made huge errors. Um, every time he talks, everything stopped, and I think that they've made his interactions a lot more punchy, a lot just like, okay, he throws out his funny line about how far away is island Mars. Okay, fine, but they don't have him like. I think they increased his speech a little bit, which really helps. But in terms of negative things, I see the only thing was my minor nitpick of I don't see why the minefield really slowed them down at all. Maybe if they had done some line about how they can't go up high enough to get away from the mines because they're in a shallow area, or they can't go up any higher because they have enemy boats above them that will start sniping them from above. I could have worked with something like that, but the way they presented it, I was definitely sitting there going like, well, why don't you just come off the seafloor a little bit? And if they explode in your wake, if you're high enough, it's not going to matter that much. But that's a nitpick thing. Clearly, the point of the minefield was just we're being slowed down. Every time we think we're about to succeed, we hit another time delay. We hit a, oops, the GPS unit was in a completely different location. We're sorry, Mario, but the princess you're seeking is in a different castle. Uh, but in terms of like negative stuff, nothing. It was a great episode. Definitely a lot better than the haunted ship one.
That's for sure. And good thing if you like the president, you'll be seeing him again later.
He worked, you know. a lot of times you have an actor come in to be the president, and then they're just they're like either idiotic or they're corrupt to the point where you can't possibly believe that anyone whose son was in the pocket of a foreign dignitary would possibly be elected president, like if the whole nation knew about it. It's one of those things where it kind of breaks the suspension of disbelief. But this president works. He had a minor conflict with Bridger, but I actually felt like it was earned. Like I felt like that was a legitimate reprimand for Bridger's character. That maybe he should have been thinking about these issues. And I think it set up also the somewhat interesting plot line of Bridger wrestling with, is he letting his own personal biases distract him from the job? And yes, it turns out that Bridger wasn't being distracted at all, but the fact that they take a moment to really evaluate yourself and recognize that you are a human being and you can make mistakes went a long way in make me enjoy Bridger's character more and enjoy the episode more. It made for an interesting kind of thought tree there.
There's a lot of focus on character in this show. Is one of the reasons I enjoy it.
Yeah. I also gotta say, I am getting a little worried. This season has been so fun to watch. We are 14 episodes in, and I am getting increasingly concerned that it's going to take a nosedive at some point. that the quality just can't keep up at this level for too long. And so I am like I'm wondering if I'm about to set myself up for disappointment. But I do remember some of the later stuff distantly, and the stuff I remember isn't horrible stuff. So we'll see. We will see. Well, any final thoughts here tonight, John?
Just it was another enjoyable episode. I feel like I say that every week, but that's pretty much the case for me, at least.
They tend to all be very enjoyable episodes. It's a fair thing. Well, cool stuff. John, thank you so much for doing this with me. And guys, thank you for hanging out with us tonight on another SeaQuest Tuesday. We'll go ahead and get things wrapped up. I hope that everyone has a safe and Merry Christmas as you go out. I highly encourage you to go out and be with your families. We can't stop life. I highly encourage you to go be with friends, go be with families. Take whatever safety precautions you feel is necessary and appropriate, but don't let yourself being scared separate you from fellowship at this time of year when we get to come together and celebrate our Lord's birth. So guys, thank you so much, and I hope that you have a wonderful Merry Christmas.
Good night.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please share it, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that bell icon to be kept up to date with all the new videos that I release on this channel. And as always, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.